Okay. So we're wrapping up attachment. And we said that secure attachment is related to positive outcomes in preschool, middle childhood, and adolescence, and young adulthood. And continuity of caregiving may link infant attachment and later development. So obviously parents don't change drastically in the patterns of behavior that they show, such that it remains a constant in the child's life most of the time. Factors that affect attachment of children in childcare, because a child might get attached to their teachers at the preschool if they're sent there at young ages. Their initial attachment quality, so their attachment to their own parents at home, might be an underlying factor, family circumstances, but also the quality of childcare. Developmentally appropriate practices at childcare, so how sensitive is the childcare setting to the developmental needs of the child. The protective influence of childcare, how much caring and nurturing does the childcare environment provide, and the scope of childcare are important. So what are the signs of developmentally appropriate childcare? So if you were one day in a situation where you wanted to send your young child to a preschool or a nursery, creche veya anaokulu, what would you have to look at so that you are at ease? So of course you want the physical setting to be clean and safe. This is less of an issue in Turkey, I have to say. Appropriate toys, appropriate equipment for the child's age. The caregiver to child ratio is important, especially at younger ages. It is required that there are more adults in the classroom, such that per child ratio is pretty low. And adult child, so for 4 or 5 years of age, you might want 10 children per 1 adult. But if the children are younger than 3, you might want to go with a 1:5 ratio, for example. A flexible daily schedule, so they understand the child's needs also. Good quality adult-child interactions, and the parents being welcome anytime, and also their licensing and accreditation, which in Turkey is also done by Milli Eğitim Bakanlığı. At one point it was done by Sosyal Sigortalar Kurumu, I think, Sosyal Hizmetler. And so these are all important points that you may want to. This parents welcome anytime is one that gives me pause. That's why I'm pausing. So maybe some of you know, maybe you don't, but my mom also is a psychologist from Istanbul University, and she had a preschool for 23 years. So I practically grew up in a preschool, so I know how they work. And I know always that parents are more difficult than children. When she retired, I think she was more fed up with parents than children. This parents welcome anytime is, parents are welcome anytime, but what are they going to do also is an important question. At the time my mother retired, these video cameras was just getting started, but now you can watch what's going on in many preschool classrooms. I mean, there's a healthy way of looking at this also. I don't want to take most of your time, but when you do become parents, become reasonable parents. It is important to understand that probably in your child's classroom there will be 9 other children. If your child is 4 or 5 years of age, maybe 19 other children. And that your child cannot get the most specialized treatment that you give at home. That is something to also keep in mind in parentheses. So I'm not here advocating for specialized treatment of all children, because that's what they learn in preschool too. They learn to be part of a group. That's different than home. So that is the end for this chapter. And let's get started with chapter 11. Before I move on to chapter 11, a few people came and asked what's going to be on the exam. I should send an email. Thank you for the reminder. But what's going to be on the exam is different than the syllabus, for the sheer fact that if it were the same as syllabus, I would have to ask about a chapter that I have never taught. So that doesn't seem acceptable. Just like that doesn't seem acceptable, it doesn't seem acceptable that I would not ask about things that I have taught and have not yet asked about. So it's going to start from chapter 6, Vygotsky. That's where we ended last time. Okay? Remember we did Piaget, we did core knowledge theories, domain theories, and then we stopped at Vygotsky. I'm going to start chapter 6 at Vygotsky. I'm not going to go back to Piaget, Vygotsky. And then we're going to do chapter 7, information processing, chapter 9, language, chapter 10, emotion, chapter 11, self and social understanding, and you will be responsible of all of chapter 11. I will find a way to finish this. Okay. So that clarifies, but I'm also, and if I do forget a jump, we should send out an email about this too. As you know, when is your exam? It is next Thursday. Okay. You guys all know who you are. If I were to ask you, you will tell me your name, which I seem to forget all the time. But there I see Sevgi, for example, yes. But you could tell me other things too. You could tell me your age, you could tell me where you're from, you could tell me the high school you went to, you could tell me about your hobbies and interests. You could tell me about your aspirations, what you want to become in the future. You could tell me about your romantic partners if we were close enough. You could tell me about your best friend, your parents. Who you are is not a mystery to you. You are not confused about who you are and who your best friend is, for example. You don't confuse the two. You know where you start and where somebody else starts, where you start and end and where somebody else starts and ends. That allows you to have relationships. That allows you to reason about self and reason about others. Now, children aren't born with disability. They actually come to understand who they are. And we're going to, in this chapter, see that development in detail. And it's quite fascinating. Now, children's social cognitive development shows certain trends that we see in their understanding of the self as well. For example, development usually proceeds from concrete things to abstract, right? Children's understanding of concrete objects to abstract categories, for example, is that kind of progression. But that also will show itself in the development of the self. The mind becomes better organized with age. Concepts become better organized with age. Children start being able to explain things in more complex and multifaceted ways rather than using only one dimension. And they move toward metacognitive understanding, meaning they start being able to reflect on their own cognition, but they will later also start being able to reflect on their own self, right? When you think of yourself, you can actually compare yourself with other people, for example. You can compare yourself in other different contexts. For example, you might be a very talkative person when you are with people that you know very well, but you might be a little bit shy when you enter into a group where you know no one. What does that say about you? Are you shy or are you outgoing? Well, it depends on the situation and the context, right? And that requires that you actually are able to reflect on yourself in different contexts. And so just like children become able to reflect on how their mind works, they also become able to reflect on who they are. How does this all start? It starts very simply. It starts from a very simple point. There's implicit self-awareness at step 1. And the way we test for it is, at 3 months, we show babies their own view, their own legs. So they can't see their legs, right? But in the monitor, they either are shown, for example, their own view versus the other's view. And they seem to take a little bit longer looking at this one. This is live feet, by the way. The feet are moving. So the child can feel their feet and legs move and also see it on the screen. And here, if they see the normal view versus a reverse view. So you put the right leg on the left right leg on the right. They also take a little bit longer looking at the reversed view. Meaning they have some understanding of their physical body, right? That belongs to them. Another step in implicit self-awareness is recognizing other as different. They look and smile more at the image of someone on camera as compared to their own image. So they, of course, these children have some experience with mirrors and stuff. So that how else are they going to know? But they also understand, because they have, remember, intermodal perception too. They understand that the person they're viewing, the face they're viewing, is not their own face, because it doesn't move the way that theirs moves. So they look longer, they smile more at somebody else's face. Then comes explicit self-awareness. So these were the 2 steps of implicit self-awareness, right? Explicit self-awareness is self-recognition, for example, at the mirror around age 2. And we have a pretty strict test for this. It's called the rouge task. The rouge task, rouge being rouge, right? A lipstick. And so here, what they do is they basically take a toddler, they play with the toddler, there's a mirror in the room, and they surreptitiously place a mark on the toddler's forehead without the toddler realizing it. And so the idea is that when they look in the mirror, will the toddler understand that, okay, they have a mark on their forehead, and will they be able to also wipe it off? All right. And so I have a little video for this so that we get a flavor of what it's like. At this conference that I went to, I also saw research rouge test done with video. So they take a video of the child. So the child sees that there's something on their forehead. When they, immediately after they play, they're shown the video of their play. And it seems like that it takes even longer for them to understand that there's something here if they're actually having to interpret it from the video. But that also has to do with children's understanding of symbolic mediums, which we will spend a week on at PSYC 350. And so, body self-awareness in older toddlers goes like this. They recognize and name self in pictures. They start using me, my, and mine. Especially age 3 is a huge peak for this. They also are setting boundaries of what is mine and what is not mine. But if you ask a 3-year-old, almost everything is theirs. So it seems like an all-inclusive category there. And 2.5 years, they make scale errors. Scale errors is still, they can make scale errors. This is not seen very widely, but it's quite normal when you see it. For example, a child playing with a toy car might actually try to get into the car, not totally, being able to juggle the pretend reality of the little toy car and how big they are themselves. What are the influences on self-awareness? Children's action on the environment, obviously, is an input for them. Their own cognitive development, so intermodal perception, the way their body feels with how it's perceived, what they see with their eyes and what they feel kinesthetically, for example. Meshing those two are important, so intermodal. Perception, sociocognitive development, joint attention, being able to attend to objects along with, or events, along with another adult, or being able to establish intersubjectivity is also important. The caregivers, the attachment relationship that the caregivers have, give a sense of agency to the child. If I cry, my parents will attend to me. If I'm in distress, that gives a kind of agency, but also cultural child-rearing practices. Okay, young infants are sensitive to variations in emotional messages. We know this. As early as 3-4 months, infants actually pick up on whether the adult's voice is angry or happy, for example. And this sets the stage for social referencing. They start using others as cues as to what is secure and what is not secure. And later, this will also set the stage for the emergence of self-conscious emotions. We saw in the last chapter things like pride, embarrassment, guilt are going to follow. In toddlers, we see that they start beginning to empathize with others, and they show mutual peer imitation. They also show a deep sense of ownership, as I said, and possessiveness. They label things as theirs to claim them. The language also affects children's understanding of self in profound ways. Now, self, yourself, for example, Yaren here, is continuous. It is not just this frame in time. Yourself has a history, yourself has a future, right? But self, at first, starts very simple, categorical. So you might say, I'm 20 years old, I'm a girl, I have physical characters, I have brown and pink hair, I wear glasses, short, işte o hepimiz, çoğumuz, most of us, not everyone. Yeah, at least in this classroom, I'm not having to jump for the screen, right? In the other research methods, I was jumping up and down or asking tall friends to help me with the screen. Goodness, badness, and also what am I good at, right? And this develops markedly with language. Without it, it would be very difficult to express, I think. Language doesn't have to be oral. Sign language is a language too, by the way. But then comes the remembered self. And children, as young as 2, start talking about what happened to them, although it is very, if you didn't know what happened to them, you wouldn't be able to understand it from how they talk about it, right? Later, though, through adult-child conversations, adults help children a lot in establishing a remembered self. This will become a life story in adolescence. And so it starts beginning at 2.5 years of age. 3.5-year-olds can talk about their own past in ways that strangers can understand. May or may not be totally coherent. It's the beginnings. But later, it will turn into a life story. An enduring self start developing around 3-4 years. It's a view of themselves as persisting over time. So it's being the same person yesterday, being the same person tomorrow. It doesn't matter whether you wear pants or a skirt, you're still going to be the same person. Yes? Their future. Their future, they start short after they start talking about their past, they start making references to future. But this future is usually told to them. They repeat what has been told. So if mother says, tomorrow we're going to go to your grandmother's, the child might repeat grandma's house, going to grandma. But that is not really like planning. But beginning around 3.5 years, you're going to start getting children to start thinking about, you know, I'll do this tomorrow kind of talk. Still, though, whether they will keep to their promise and do what they said they would is a different question. Yes? Oh, adults help a lot. Adults, so children's talk is very fragmented. And as I said, when children start talking about the past, if you didn't know what they lived through, it's very difficult to understand it. Parents put it in context. They fill in the gaps. They basically, by conversing about the past, they provide the child with a coherent narrative about what happened. For example, if a child has gone to the zoo and the child has seen a tiger, the first narratives that the child produces about this experience is going to be very fragmented, bölük pörçük. And so she might say, tiger, tiger in the cage, did you not? And there was other animals in the same cage. Do you remember what those were? And so it goes on. And you had an ice cream in your hand, remember, and it fell on the ground. So the parents do the major on their own. And without adults' linguistic help, it would be pretty difficult for children to actually put this together. And cultures vary in how much they talk about the past, but also how they talk about it, according to how much detail is asked for, how many open-ended questions parents ask, versus how many closed-ended questions children are asked. And so we see those differences then carry out to children's own reporting of their own autobiographical memories too. Ah, here it is. I just said this. Theory of mind. Around 4 years of age, children start showing big improvements in what we call theory of mind. This is not a good label for it. However, and unfortunately, it has become the label for what I'm going to talk about. Here I'm going to keep it short. On theory of, I can talk for 14 weeks, but I won't. I may be teaching it next spring. If so, if interested, we can meet after 3:50 for theory of mind. But what is it? Theory of mind is children's ability. So theory of mind are all of these three things. So if I do ask what is theory of mind on the exam, giving me A will get you 1/3 of the score, because it is not just A. It is the ability to understand that people may have different emotions, desires, thoughts, and beliefs about the same thing. It's also the ability to understand that people's actions are governed by their mental states, and the ability to understand that a person with a false belief will act in accordance with that belief. It's also the ability to understand that people's actions are governed by their mental states, and the ability to understand that a person with a false belief will act in accordance with that belief. Let's give an example to make it concrete. Imge. Imge, do you like lemonade? Yes. Yes, Imge likes lemonade. Let's pretend I don't like lemonade. So it's a very hot day. There is a pitcher of lemonade in the fridge. I know that, so I'm very thirsty. She looks very thirsty. We're all kind of sweating. It's Ankara in July. And Imge and I are both in this room with the refrigerator. Now, I understand, hey, that while I don't like lemonade, Imge actually likes lemonade. That's good. And also, I understand that however she feels is going to determine how she acts. So if she's thirsty and she likes lemonade, and there is a pitcher of lemonade in the refrigerator, she's probably going to try to get a glass of lemonade for herself, right? Yes. But what if I know before Imge entered the room, I was in that room, and somebody came and took the whole pitcher and left? I know there is no lemonade in the refrigerator. She doesn't. Theory of mind is the ability to understand that Imge will still go to the refrigerator for the lemonade, even though there is no lemonade in the refrigerator. Because she has a false belief. She believes that lemonade is still inside the refrigerator when it isn't, when I know different, right? So it's these three things all together, wrapped up to one, is theory of mind. What factors contribute to theory of mind? Language and verbal reasoning are a huge part of theory of mind, both in research done with North American children, with European children, with children from Asian countries or Far Eastern countries. And also research in our lab shows very high correlations between theory of mind performance and children's language scores as assessed by standardized tasks. It makes a lot of sense also because theory of mind is usually tested through tasks that has a lot of words in them. You have to be able to understand what it's saying. But it can't be the whole story. Executive function actually plays a role. The ability to represent two things in mind and being able to shift between them. Remember, executive function involves that shift is important for theory of mind. If we wanted to go back to the example with Imge and the lemonade, we will know, for example, that I have to be able to represent that there is no lemonade in the refrigerator. At the same time, I should be able to represent that Imge thinks there is lemonade in the refrigerator. I should be able to do both. And I should be able to shift between them. that requires executive functions as well. Security of attachment seems also to be related, probably indirectly, through sensitive parenting. So children who actually have reciprocal relations with their caregivers seem to also have a head start in theory of mind.
It also relates to their empathy skills. For example, more sensitive parents teach children more empathy. And encourage children to make more empathy, and so they can understand other people's thoughts.
It certainly can play a role. It can't be the whole story because there's a big cognitive component to this too, in the sense of understanding false beliefs. But understanding another's emotion requires such cognitive capacity as well. So yes, it could definitely also have to do with sensitive parenting, and see maternal mindedness here. What I was going to talk about is mothers' belief that their children are agents with minds. What does that mean? Don't all parents know that their children have a mind? But do all parents act as if their children do have a mind? Is the question. A very nice test of this was done, where, we just went over strange situations. So they did strange situation with parents, where children were taken into a room. The stranger entered, the mother left, whatever. But what they did that I think was genius was that they took the mothers out, and they had the mothers watch what was going on, which is okay. But they also recorded the mothers talk. They asked the mothers, what is your child doing now? And some mothers were more likely to talk about their children's mental states. So they were more likely to say, for example, oh, he's scared, he thinks I'm not coming back, he doesn't know where I am. Do you hear? There's a mental state word in every sentence I have said so far. Those mothers' children actually scored higher on theory of mind 1.5 years later. So other mothers were more describing behaviors. Oh, see, he's crying, he's banging his toys, he's trying to open the door. Now these were more descriptions of what the child was doing. And these children, it's not that these children didn't develop theory of mind, they did. But they were as fast as their peers whose mothers kept thinking about their children as mental agents, right? The mindedness comes in that form. So it's and emotions may well be a part of it, like you said, because emotions come early. Children become interested in emotions before they become interested in beliefs. They start talking about emotions before they start talking about beliefs. A 3-year-old will tell you when they're happy, when they're sad, and will use a lot of emotion words, knowingly or unknowingly. Like, they may not know what they're talking about at first, but they will be interested in talking about these. And parents who actually coach children in understanding others' emotions may as well be promoting a kind of perspective-taking ability that caters to theory of mind. Did I see a hand? Var mı soru? Tamam. Make-believe play. Why? Because in make-believe play, children take sometimes roles that are different than theirs. Again, a kind of perspective. So they might act like the mother, for example, although they're not the mother. And in being in that role might require that they have different cognitions about things, right? For example, as the child, they might be a child, this child might be someone who has difficulty finishing their food, but as the mother in play, they might be like, you're not leaving the table before you finish your food. So this is a different perspective, right? So it also might, yes, improve theory of mind.
Can we say that the children who are yet ego-centered are not the whole of the theory of mind?
And what do we mean by ego-centered?
Like, they cannot understand what the other person sees or how do they feel.
Yes, actually you asked a very nice question. Piaget's egocentrism was mainly based on children's inability to take perspectives. And beginning early 80s, that research got translated partially into theory of mind. Piaget never talked about theory of mind in that way, but basically his thoughts about children's inability to take perspective of others, both visual and also mental, has actually continued in this research, although he's not given much credit for this. Yes. And also their social interact conversation is a very good tool that improves theory of mind. In conversations, you need to take the other person's perspective. How do we do that? We do that because if lady goes to the movies without Inge, somehow it happens. And Inge wants to see the same movie. And lady comes back. She needs to be careful about what she's saying, correct? She can't tell what happens at the end of the movie, for example. So conversations require that we take perspective. If you were talking to an 8-year-old and describing how barcodes work, that should be different than how you talk to a 12-year-old to tell them about how barcodes work. And so that, again, requires that you perspective take. So there are several theory of mind tasks that are widely done now, have been done in many cultures. And one of them is the Selian task or the Maxi task. So depending on who's doing it, the name changes. But the story goes like this. This is Sally. Sally has a basket. And this is Anne. Anne has a box. Sally has a marble. She puts the marble into the basket. Sally goes out for a walk. Anne takes the marble out of the basket and puts it in the box. Now Sally comes back. She wants to play with her marble. Where will Sally look for her marble? A very easy story. What is quite interesting is that children younger than 4, 4.5 make systematic mistakes. And they show the new location as where Sally will look. Because they are confusing what they know with what Sally knows. Remember, Sally left the marble in the basket. For all we know, Sally thinks that the marble is in the basket. Correct? She doesn't think it's in the box. So children 3 and early 4 years of age will consistently say that she will look for the marble in its correct location. But we expect that they understand her false belief. Another task is the Smarties task. This in Turkish is the bonibon task. Right, that's what we use. One Saturday morning, what time was it, Ejab? It was early testing.
It was before 10.
Before 10. Ejab calls me and says, we need bonibon. Because we have a participant coming and we are out of bonibon boxes. And there is none at Fiero. Yes. So we had a bonibon crisis. Now we are stocked up on bonibon boxes in our lab. We can eat the bonibon. We don't need the candy, right? All we need is the box. Why? Here we show the children a box that they know well. That's why we go with bonibon, Smarties in Canada, and Band-Aid box sometimes, yaraban. Something they have seen before, they know what it looks like, they have an expectation. And we ask children what they think is inside the box before we open it. We shake it a little bit to make them hear that there's something inside the box. Now children, of course, should say candy if we're showing the bonibon box. But later we open the box and show that there's something unexpected in that box. For example, there might be a crayon, ribbons. Then we put the unexpected contact back into the box, close the lid, and ask the child, what did you tell me there was inside this box before I opened it? Now, it is such an easy question. We expect that all children will tell us that they thought there was candy inside the box. Interestingly enough, 3-year-old children and early 4-year-old or early or young 4-year-olds actually tell us the true contents of the box. So they're making essentially the same mistake they did here. They're telling us the correct answer, but we're asking for their false thoughts, false beliefs. Yes. Before we go here, let's watch. It is quite fascinating that they make such systematic errors and that there is such a jump. However, that is not the whole story. Theory of mind development actually takes a second turn. And this is now middle childhood, 7 to 9 years of age, where children start understanding somebody's thoughts, false beliefs about another person's beliefs. And so here, for example, let's go through this one. Jason has a letter, and this is from Asking Pelletier and Homer, 2002. Jason has a letter from a friend. Lisa wants to read the letter, but Jason doesn't want her to. Jason puts the letter under his pillow. Jason leaves the room to help his mother. While Jason is gone, Lisa takes the letter and reads it. But Jason returns and watches Lisa. But Lisa doesn't see Jason. Then Lisa puts the letter in Jason's desk. So now things became a little bit more complicated, right? So she thinks that he doesn't know that she read the letter. Correct? So she has a false belief about his beliefs. And the social world includes a lot of these second order type problems. There are a lot of girls in this classroom, which means a lot of girl friendships, a lot of groups, right? A lot of second order reasoning actually happens in these groups. In order to be successful in adult relationships, second order theory of mind is also necessary. This is just a recap of what we already talked about. Why is theory of mind important? Why do we care? Okay, it's fascinating that children make systematic errors, and all of a sudden, meaning in a matter of 1.5 years, most of the children start giving correct answers. That's fascinating in itself. But also, theory of mind ability seems to be related to other abilities as well. It's crucial for navigating the social world successfully. Preschoolers who are successful at theory of mind are better adjusted, they form more friendships, and they're also more popular. Children who are slow at developing theory of mind were found to be less social, and they were often the victim of bullying. And so theory of mind seems to play an important role in children's social school readiness. Are there individual differences in theory of mind? Of course. And we said executive function and language abilities are highly correlated with theory of mind in almost every single culture that has been studied. This includes Turkish kids as well. Socioeconomic status also is related to theory of mind. Again, what does money have to do with it? Not much. It is what the socioeconomic status signifies, as I try to explain here. Usually middle class is more stable family environment. Educational status of parents might be higher, which means that parents probably have a richer language when they talk to the children. The child's language is higher. That affects theory of mind. The quality of daycare that children go to might be higher because parents are able to afford that, which then results in better teacher-child relationship, a lot of language that happens at preschool, hence